Good afternoon. Today I am going to talk about integer partitions. So the only way to learn mathematics is to do mathematics. So you can do mathematics as a fun so that you can learn a lot. So this was a quote by Paul Halmos, a famous mathematician. So mathematics has evolved over a period of 10,000 years. Even if we gave a formal symbols of addition, multiplication, before giving the symbols itself, the ancient people realized a lot of mathematics. So in the rock carvings, something on the cave, the people who lived in the cave have some carvings in the rock. So before the right formulation of mathematical symbols, they knew some small numbers, small amount of numbers, and the equality of two numbers. Just think of a situation if you don't have teach numbers, plus, addition and subtraction. If you are given two different things, how can we able to just distinguish them whether they are same or not? So in those days they have that small counting on numbers, equality of two numbers, and the distinction between odd and even numbers, they are all known to the caveman itself. So today we will see how some of the observations of the caveman and the ancient Hindu, Greeks and Egyptians, how they emerges as the beautiful mathematical statements of this modern age. And I am picking up one such field of mathematics which is on integer partitions and some identities involving the integer partitions. So now look at this. These are the carvings in a rock by a caveman. You think these as animals, and don't confuse with these two sets. This set of animals associated to this and this set of animals are associated to this, likewise for all. So what it says here, one animal in the first row, one animal in the second row, but two animals on the single row, but they just associate this. But for the number 3, they are associating two different sets, like one on each row and one on the just everything on single row, and just everything on the single row, and 2 in the first row and 1 in the second row. So this is for 4 also, they have two set of objects. So what this rock carving means to say? So for this shows, as they know only counting of small numbers, they are giving the terms in terms of n equal to 4, like number of animals is 4. So for at least up to 4 animals, they can be lined up in rows of odd lengths in as many ways as in rows of different lengths. Let me explain this statement clearly. Like the line here, how many animals in the first row? Just 1. Here also just 1. So here you see 3. So the animals lined up in rows of odd number of animals in each row can be just here for 2 only you have 1, like 1 plus 1 and 2. So here 3 can be odd ways of writing the 3 is like numbers less than 3 which is odd is 1 and 3, like 1 and 3 are the only odd numbers. So the ways of writing, the animals are standing in the first row, in a odd number of animals is the possibility 1, 1, 1, and the other possibility is 3. So here 3 is the only distinct thing. Here 2, 1, that means rows of animals having different lengths. The animals who are standing in the first row should be different in number in the second row. So that's what this carving means. For at least up to 4 animals, they can be lined up in rows of odd lengths in as many ways as in rows of different lengths. So now let me use our symbols of mathematics to formulate these things. So here for n equal to 2, number of animals is 2 is, these numbers represent number of animals in the first row, number of animals in the second row, likewise. So now see this column, all row lengths are odd number of row lengths, and this is distinct number, like if you have for number 3, 2 animals and 1 animals, here 1 plus 1 is not allowed because they are not of distinct lengths. So while observing this, we know the fact that we have for each n as many number of items in the left column as that of in the right column. So this is what this rock carving says. So the table for 5 and 6 is like this. When we have 5 animals, what are the ways of doing this? So now we have only few number of animals, so we just line them up and see how things is going on. Now if for example, if I am giving 50 or 100 animals, how can we do this? It's really difficult. So what we are going to do is, counting directly is very difficult, but formulating into a mathematical statement and trying to prove with a greater generality is much easier. So for like a statement for all n greater than or equal to 1, can we count them, or can we give a formula, or can we give this is true for all n greater than or equal to 1. So what these objects of this kind, 3 plus 1, 5 plus 5 plus 1, just lining up 5 things in first row, 5 things in second row, what this kind of objects mean? These objects are called integer partitions. That is, it is a way of given a number, how can you split that number into integer parts. So the row lengths corresponding to, I am using the word part, which is the row length of each row. So here there are 2 rows in which the first row is having 3 elements and the second row is 1. So this has 2 parts. So integer partitions are the way of splitting the number into integer parts. So for this is n, for n equal to 2, how many ways you can split this integer? You can split it as 1 plus 1 and 2, then 3, and 3. So splitting an integer either 2 plus 1 or 1 plus 2 is same. So let me fix a notation like I am always splitting with denoting this with the bigger part coming first. So like 5 plus 7 plus 2, I always write like this. Okay. So for 4 we have 5 numbers. You can see what are all them, which is 4 plus 1 or 3 plus 2, or this again can be yeah, 5 also I can. Oh, sorry. So this is the 5 ways of splitting the integer into 4. So that's what I am denoting. So whether writing 3 plus 1 and 1 plus 3 is immaterial, we use the convention that the greater part, largest part should be come first and then the smallest. Also for partitions, instead of using plus symbol in between, you can denote it by the brackets like this. So Leonhard Euler, who was the first one, proved a statement which was observed by the caveman in 1948. Now how he formulated the problem into a precise mathematical statement. So this is the picture of Leonhard Euler. So what he is telling, every number has as many integer partitions into odd parts as into distinct parts. What it means, I am giving an integer, you have so many partitions of integer, among the partitions you just picked up the partitions having only odd parts, and you are picked up the odd, partitions having only distinct parts. So how many of them? They are same. That means as many integer partitions into odd parts as into distinct parts. So for writing we need some notations. So I am denoting this P of n, the number of partitions of a given number n. So already I told we are going to talk about partitions and partition identities. So what are partition identities? What we have in the previous statement is something, in the previous statement is some condition on the partition should satisfy this condition and the partition should satisfy this condition and they are equal. So this kind of statements, the statements of that every number has as many integer partitions of this sort as that of that sort. So these kind of statements are all called partition identities. And in partition identities, actually what we are interested is the number of partitions that satisfy some condition. That means the left hand side and right hand side, the number should be same, that's all we need. So this is the one notable part. So for that again we have some notation which is much convenient. So P n such that some condition we are denoting by the number of partitions of n which satisfies that given condition. So we are taking like this. So as an example, now the Euler's identity which we mentioned earlier takes the form that P, the partitions having number of odd parts, is equal to the partition having number of distinct parts. Now mathematically by counting we are telling for few numbers, but if n grows larger, how can we prove this using this mathematical statement? So one natural idea is just calculating on the left side, arriving a formula, and calculating on the right side, arriving another formula, and say these two are equal. But that is also difficult. If n grows, how can you tell these many things? But why this is difficult? What we need is actually the number of them are equal. That only we need. So we use a method called method of bijection for proving this kind of partition identities without calculating actually how many of them are. Just we want to say both number are equal. So we use this method of bijection. So this proves by bijection. It's like whatever you are doing in your day life, you can formulate into a mathematical one. For example, if I have 3 names and I want to assign that 3 names to some of the students, so I am just picking one name for each student. So mathematically how can I speak this? There is a function which is having names in your domain and lot of students in your codomain, and I am associating this name to that student, and the function is telling which name is associated to which student. So everything what you want is you are just describing in terms of mathematics. So this bijection is like you have 2 sets. So if we want to verify that the number of objects of a type X, that means a set X is equal to a number of objects in a set type Y, then we don't need to find the actual numbers. It is enough to say that taking a number here, like if I have more number of students, only I have 3 numbers, then that number won't be agree. But if there are only 3 students and only here, how should we know this? From domain to codomain, you are fixing for each member, each name there is only a unique student, and from codomain to domain, for each member I have a unique name. So in that way you can say both sets have same number of things. So this is the bijection which makes our life easier. So it is enough to pair them up. Pair them up means which one goes to which, and the reverse way which comes from there. So for example, a simple operation is splitting an even part into 2 equal parts, and the inverse of this, like if you have an even part, just split them into an equal part, you will get 2 parts of odd length which are identical. And the inverse of that operation is wherever you have 2 equal parts, just pick them and merge, you will get a even one. So this gives an immediate bijective proof of the partition identity, that the partitions having even parts is same as the number of partitions having even number of each part. So what it says, if you have a partition, every part is the even part. So for example, am picking a partition which is having every part is an even part. Then I can associate a partition which having even number of each parts by just so each part is even number. In that way I am associating. And like if I have a partition in which each part is even number of times, then just merging it. So same whether it is even or odd, merging a equal part will always result you in even parts only. So we get a bijection. But in general, just think of if we doesn't know all these bijective methods, it is really difficult. If n grows larger, we should work out in hand. So that's what these mathematical statements are much easier. Now we come back to our original problem, which is the Euler's identity. So we want to give a bijection between the odd number of parts and the distinct parts. So now I am going from the one way, from odd parts to distinct parts. If it is already having, as these are odd parts, if they are already distinct, nothing to do, just keep it as it is. But they are odd parts, but some of them are identical. Then what you will do, you just merge them and again see whether it coincides with some other part already exists, again merge them. So until you are just adding up until you get the distinct parts. For example, like this, I am merging the identical parts, and again here I am merging the identical parts, which result in again two identical parts. Again I am doing this. So in this way I am starting from an odd part, I got a distinct part. Now the reverse way also, if you have distinct parts, you need odd parts. So whatever even parts are there, just split it into two. If it is again even, just again split it into two until all becomes odd parts. So split the even parts into two halves and further as many times as you needed. Now we got a bijection for the two sets on the sides of partition identities. Now the same bijection, like splitting and merging, it will give a bijective proof for another statement, like the number of partitions of n having even number of odd parts is same as the number of partitions having all parts are distinct and the number of odd parts is even. So for example, here you have even number of odd parts. So once you merge them, you will get, once if it is not, so what we need is number of odd parts is even, at the same time you need a distinct parts. Now I start with even number of odd parts which doesn't have distinct parts. So what you will do, there are two identical parts are there, so you just merging them. Then what will happen, already there are even number of odd parts and you are merging them too, so you will get an odd number of, merging the two will result in an even part, then you get number of odd parts is even. Okay, can I write it in an example? If you doesn't understand, just stop me. Okay, now these partitions we can represent. Now instead of looking at the partitions as number, still it is easier if we look at them as some diagrams. So these are the diagram, there is two ways of graphical representation of these partitions. One is Ferrer's graph and one is Ferrer's board or Young diagram. So in which the partition, that means what we did earlier, again the caveman problem they are telling in a modern way, 4 animals lined in the first row, which is just the 4 dots in the first row, 2 dots in the second row likewise. So instead of dots, they just replace that with a square. So this is the Ferrer's graph corresponds to this partition. Now up to integers 8, I am giving just how the, so this is for integer 1, there is one way of splitting and 1 Ferrar's board, and for integer 2 this is 1 plus 1 and this is just 2. This is 1 plus 1 plus 1, this is 2 plus 1, this is just 3. So like this, see just for 8 itself you have this many partitions. So partitions grows rapidly when n increases. Now for proving the bijection of this partition identities, now instead of telling the bijection in terms of partition, we just tell some operations on this Ferrar's board so that it directly give a bijection. So what it is? Conjugate partitions. So we have a partitions and we are defining conjugate partitions, means to each partition you have a Ferrar's board, and if you are given a Ferrar's board you can get a unique partition. So if I am giving this Ferrar's board, you can tell which partition it is, which is 4, 2, 1, that is the partition. So conjugation is just flipping this Ferrar's board diagonally, just this will go here and this will come here, means rows becomes columns and columns becomes rows. So again if you conjugate, you come back to the original Ferrar's board. Now look at the previous pictures. This partition conjugation gives this partition. So just take this diagonal line, the partitions whoever here on conjugation will the corresponding one, the conjugations will give the corresponding one, and just to see the middles one, even if you conjugate also they still remains same because of their shape. Okay. So now what this conjugation operation did, here you conjugate, this is the greatest part, that means the largest part in our partition, that means 4. By conjugation it takes a partition whose largest part into a partition who having that many parts. Okay. So here 4, here you have 4 rows. So that is what this says. So this operation on Ferrar's graph returns a partition with greatest part equal to the number of parts of the original partition. So in this way you can prove another partition identity, like you want partition who having number of parts is m, that means you want, I want all the animals who rowed up only in m rows. So that kind of partitions you need. So that number can be equal to the partitions whose greater part is m. It is much easier, like you have for n you having so for given n you have a partition, and I am telling for m less than n I need a set of all partitions who having only m parts, that means like this m of them. So what I will do, I just conjugate it, I can just conjugate the Ferrar's diagram, this m will go here. So what you need is first those partitions whose first part is greatest part is m. So it is much easier. Now you are looking for all the partitions whose first part is m and remaining the collection of all partitions with partition of n minus m is needed. That is all we need. So for example, if you take so this is a partition of 6. Now I want how many of them? So this, oh, I can do like this. So what I get here, so what you need to calculate is those partitions whose first part is 3. So, already 3 elements gone. So, the remaining places, how many of them will come? P of 3. Remaining partitions of all 3 will occupy this place. So, it is still reducing a bigger problem into one more smaller one. That is what? Oh, sorry. That is all, right? Thank you. So this conjugation, the operation of conjugation is just a bijection. Previously we are explicitly mentioned merging, splitting kind of thing, but now the operation on Ferrer's board will gives you the bijection. What is that, ma'am? Now self conjugate partition. So we have lot of self conjugate partitions. Then what is the use of this? Now you have a self conjugate partition. Just look at these partitions. Can you see a natural transformation from self conjugate partitions to partitions into distinct odd parts? From this diagram, can you see, can you make this, do some operations on this diagram so that you get a partition whose parts are distinct odd parts? So the self conjugate partitions are, you have how many number of elements here, that will be here, how many number of elements here, that means symmetric on the diagonal vertices. So now we use this fact. So you have a symmetric partition. Just what I am doing is, I am taking the first row, just stretch it out, and I am taking the second row, again I am stretch it out. So along this dot you have equal number of elements, that means even number of elements plus 1. So always symmetric partitions, if you partition like this, the number of dots here are always odd, and as they are symmetric, it will definitely number of dots here will be less than number of dots here. So in this way, just stretching out the symmetric partitions like this, you get a bijection between self conjugate partitions to partitions into odd parts, and the odd parts are distinct with each other, right? So that is what I am explaining here. Just merging a row with a column of same length in a self conjugate partition, and again coming back from this set to this set is just, this is odd number of things. So you just start with this, bend like this, again start with this, bend like this, you will come in a reverse way. So we are proving, we proved this identity, this is the bijection. So self conjugate, number of self conjugate partitions are this. Now we just see some interesting numbers. These numbers are, these triangular numbers are just number of dots which preserves the like the triangle shape is preserved, but we are keep on increasing and the dots are will be in equal size. So these are triangular numbers 1, 3, 6, 10 and 15. Now square numbers, just increasing the square eventually, so you get like this. And one more is pentagonal numbers. So it's like it is a picture, enlarged picture for the place constraint, I just put it as small. So it is like eventually enlarge a pentagon, and you have dots also in the equal size. So the pentagonal numbers are 1, 5, 12, 22 and 35. It will grow as n grows. I am just putting for 4. So why these numbers are interesting? So these numbers are interesting sacred geometry, which is like in ancient Greeks, all the buildings and structures which symbolizes like palaces and the buildings that related to king and all, they have a model always in a cubic shape. And the god, like for building God's temple and all, they always maintain a ratio which is called golden ratio. The golden ratio is a sum of two number, ratio between two sums, which is like you have A and B, and A is greater than B. So the golden ratio is always A plus B by the bigger, sum of the numbers by the bigger number, which is, so this is a constant which is denoted by phi, and its value is grows like this. So these numbers in the ancient Greek temples and all, they always want to build a temples which are involving this golden ratios, and whether small or big temple, they always want to maintain that ratio. And for Hindus, we already know whatever we are doing in the like home or temple, we have a different basement which is measured in our ancient period itself. So Hindus will always use a square for their geometry in building square. First they will fix east and west and a square platform, and on that platform they will laid out the entire building. Now this cathedrals, that means the Christians, they use cube and double cube in their construction, and the ancient Egyptians, they want to construct everything in a regular polygon and different sizes also. They don't want to change the shape, just they eventually want to increase the pentagon. So this all these pentagonal numbers, square numbers, which are already observed in the ancient period, and they are very strict about this in their construction. Yeah. So it is surprising so for a partition function, Euler found that for a partition function, Euler defined a generating function. Generating function, what it means, it is that means a function here 2 3 so it's like it will grow. So he give a function in which the coefficient of x power n will give the number of partitions of the integer. So this how he did is this can be written again as in a different way. Like this, and what he did was he actually calculated this expression up to this. You will get partition of 0, which is 1, and next you want to calculate 2, then you will get partition of 0 plus 1. Like recurrence relation means on each term you will the input will be previous terms you will get. So he found that it satisfies the recurrence relation like this, and the number on the first term, second term, on the jth term is the jth pentagonal number. The number we are subtracting, just to look at it, 1, 2, 5, 7, 12, they are the jth pentagonal numbers. So in this way he found it like it's already they have something in ancient historic people, but whenever we are doing, he found them coming here. Now he want to do this as a mathematical statements. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. So he have, using all these things, he have one more identity which is called Euler's pentagonal number theorem, in which the partitions, number of partitions having even number of distinct parts, which is equal to the partitions having odd number of distinct parts plus some E of n. This E of n is plus or minus 1 when the, that means the, when the integer n is some pentagonal number. So why this E of n comes is, they can't give exactly the bijection. So except the pentagonal numbers, except for n who are pentagonal numbers, they can able to give the bijection, but when they are pentagonal numbers, they need to add or subtract some numbers. So for that he used this E of n. I am not going into the proof. Now partitions, what we seen is like plain one dimensional thing. So this is plain partitions. So here you have, already we have partitions like this, but now we are having a plain partitions which are an integers or array of integers like 3, 2, 2, 1, something like 2, 1, 1, 1, like this. What it means is, you can stack over the cube. This is 1 comma in a cube, this is 1 comma 1 position, this is 1 comma 2 position. So on 1 comma 1 position you will place 3 cubes. On the 2 comma 1 position you will, 1 comma 2 position you will place 2 cubes, like this. So how this partition, this plain partition looks like, it is like this diagram. So this is a plain partition of 5, 4, 2, 1, 1, 3, 2, 2, 2. So for one dimensional thing we represent in Ferrar's diagram, which is 2 dimensional. So this array of integers, it look like 2 dimensional, so we can represent them in the 3 dimensional space. So the reference for all this is Integer Partitions, a book by George Andrews and Kimmo Erickson.
I would like to make a remark that it was mentioned, it was Euler who started the theory of partitions. He gave the generating function and studied many properties of partition function. And after Euler, the biggest contribution to partition function has come from India. Can you name somebody?
Like from the odd partitions to the number of distinct partitions, like it didn't sound very convincing to me. I'm not able to, like, you're showing that every odd partition can be transformed into an different partition, but how are we so sure that all the distinct partitions are covered in that mapping?
If you picked up any distinct partitions, then if it is not odd, you can construct actually an partition having odd number of parts. Okay. So what you want is, you are telling there may be some distinct partitions which cannot be covered. You are telling, right? What's
yeah, the bisection did not sound pretty clear for me.